My name is Claire, and for the longest time, I thought I was living the life I always wanted. A decent marriage, a sweet son who was my whole world, and a sense of stability that I clung to even on the rough days. But here's the thing about illusions, they don't last forever. And sometimes, the person who shatters them is the one who promised to protect them in the first place. Let me take you back. At first, my marriage to Daniel seemed normal enough. We met in our 20s, fell in love quickly, and before I knew it, we were building a life together. When our son, Michael, came into the picture, I thought, this is it. This is happiness. Daniel was a good dad in those early years. He loved reading bedtime stories to Michael, building Lego towers with him, even teaching him to ride a bike in the cul-de-sac of our quiet suburban neighborhood. But then, around the time Michael turned 8, something changed. Daniel's behavior shifted. Subtly at first, in ways that only I seemed to notice. He became more watchful, more suspicious. It was like he was always looking for evidence of something I hadn't done. If I smiled too long at the barista at Starbucks, that guy was flirting with you. Did you really need to smile back like that? If I texted one of my old friends, who happened to be male, oh, so you have time to text him but not me? What's going on, Claire? At first, I brushed it off. Maybe he was stressed at work. Maybe fatherhood had just changed him. I tried to reassure him, to calm his spiraling thoughts. The more I reassured him, the worse his accusations became. Almost like my kindness was fueling his paranoia. One night, after dinner, he exploded out of nowhere. Daniel, you're distant lately. I can feel it. Don't even deny it, Claire. Me, distant. Daniel, I'm literally right here every night. I haven't gone anywhere. Daniel, don't play dumb with me. I know what you're doing. That was the first time I felt true dread in my chest. Because for the first time, I realized this wasn't about me at all. This was about something inside him. And I was right. A couple months later, the truth came crashing down. I found out Daniel was having an affair with a woman at his office. A coworker. One of the people he claimed was so supportive of him during his difficult marriage. I still remember the moment I found the proof. His phone lit up on the counter while he was in the shower. A message popped up. Last night was amazing. Can't wait to see you again tomorrow. My stomach dropped. I opened the thread. And there it was, weeks of messages, plans to meet, little inside jokes. All while he was accusing me of wandering eyes. That's when everything clicked. His paranoia. His accusations. It was projection. He wasn't suspicious of me because I'd done something wrong. He was suspicious because he was doing something wrong. I confronted him that night. Me, how long, Daniel? How long have you been sleeping with her? Daniel, what are you talking about? Me, don't you dare. Don't you dare lie to me when I have the messages right here. His face went pale, then twisted with anger. Daniel, you shouldn't be going through my phone. That's a violation. Me, a violation? You've been violating our marriage vows for months. Don't you dare try to make me the villain here. That night, I decided. No second chances. No sweeping this under the rug. I filed for divorce. But here's the heartbreaking part. I had to sit my 8-year-old son down and explain that Mommy and Daddy weren't going to be living together anymore. Michael looked up at me with those big, confused eyes, and I couldn't bring myself to tell him the truth. How could I? How do you look at your child and say, your father broke our family because he couldn't keep his promises? So I lied. I told him, sometimes, adults just grow apart. It's not your fault. Daddy and I both love you very much. That will never change. And I stuck to that story. For years. Because more than anything, I didn't want Michael to grow up hating his father because of his love for me. I thought I was protecting him. But what I didn't realize is that the lie I told to shield my son would become the very weapon my ex-husband used to try and destroy me. The divorce itself was messy, but manageable. We settled on joint custody. Daniel had him every other weekend, and sometimes during the week if his schedule allowed. I always encouraged Michael to go, even when he didn't want to. Because I believed, naively, that co-parenting could work, as long as I kept things civil. But deep down, I always worried. I worried Daniel would twist things, try to manipulate Michael, or worse, let his bitterness spill over. Still, for years, everything seemed stable enough. Michael adjusted. I adjusted. And Daniel seemed to move on with his affair partner. But let me give you another little hook here. Just because the storm looks calm on the surface, doesn't mean there aren't currents raging underneath. And those currents were about to drag everything down. By the time Michael hit his teenage years, I thought maybe, just maybe, we'd made it through the worst. He was a smart, funny, compassionate kid. He loved video games, late-night talks, and asking me big questions about life. But I noticed something. Every time he came back from his dad's, he was quieter, more withdrawn. Sometimes even a little cold toward me. I chalked it up to teenage moods. Hormones. The awkwardness of splitting time between two households. But oh, how wrong I was. Because behind the scenes, Daniel wasn't just being a father. He was planting seeds. Poisonous seeds. And one day, years later, those seeds would bloom into a nightmare I never saw coming. Years slipped by after the divorce. Michael grew from that wide-eyed little boy into a thoughtful teenager. He was taller now, voice deeper, his humor sharper. But to me, he would always be my little boy, the one I promised to protect. For the most part, we found our rhythm. He spent time with both of us. I focused on making our home a safe place, warm meals, open conversations, no judgment. My mission was simple. No matter what happened with Daniel, I wanted Michael to know he could always trust me. But here's the cruel irony. The very trust one thought was unbreakable. Daniel was working behind the scenes to corrode it, piece by piece. At first, I didn't notice. The changes were subtle. Michael would come back from his dad's house and seem off. Sometimes he was quiet, sometimes he was snappy. Me, rough weekend, sweetheart. Michael, it's fine. Me, you sure? Michael, yeah. Just tired. But the tiredness wasn't from lack of sleep. It was the kind of heaviness you carry when you're confused. When you're holding something in. And then, one night, everything cracked open. We were sitting in the living room, a movie paused on the screen. Michael looked at me, his face caught somewhere between anger and sadness. Michael, Mom, can I ask you something? And can you be honest? Me, always. You know you can. Michael, did you cheat on Dad? Those words sliced through me like a blade. My heart stopped. Me, what? Michael, he told me, that's why you guys divorced. That you were paranoid, you ruined his work life, and then, you cheated on him. I swear, for a moment, the room spun. This was the nightmare I never saw coming. I thought I'd protected my son with a lie. But Daniel had taken that shield and twisted it into a weapon against me. I took a deep breath, fighting back tears. Me, Michael, look at me. That is not true. I never cheated on your dad. Not once. Michael, but, he said, me, I don't care what he said. He's lying to you. The truth is, your dad cheated on me. That's why we divorced. Silence. Just silence. Michael stared at me, shock flashing across his face, followed by anger. But this time, the anger wasn't at me. Michael, he lied to me. Me, yes. 4 years. I didn't tell you because I wanted to protect you. I thought it would be easier if you didn't know the ugly truth. Michael, but all this time, he made it seem like it was you. I reached for his hand, but he pulled back, pacing the room, running his fingers through his hair. He looked betrayed, shattered. Michael, I don't even know who to believe anymore. That broke me. That my son even had to question who to trust. Later that night, after he went to his room, I sat on my bed and cried silently. Rage burned in my chest, not at Michael, but at Daniel. At the audacity of a man who cheated, lied, and then dared to poison his own child against me. I knew what I had to do. I had to confront him. If Daniel wanted war, I wasn't going to fight it in whispers anymore. I was ready to drag the truth into the light. The next day, I called him. Me, we need to talk. Now. Daniel, about what? Me, don't play dumb. About what you told Michael. We met in a coffee shop. I chose a public place deliberately, safer, harder for him to explode without witnesses. The moment I sat down, I didn't waste time. Me, why did you tell Michael I cheated? Why are you lying to him about the divorce? He leaned back, smirking, but his eyes betrayed him, darting nervously. Daniel, because you ruined my life, Claire. You couldn't forgive me. You paraded your new boyfriend in front of me. I've never paraded anyone in front of you. I've gone out of my way to keep my private life separate, so Michael could have both of us without drama. Don't twist this. Daniel, oh please. You've always been paranoid. You pushed me away. You disrupted everything. What did you expect me to tell my son? That his mother destroyed his father? I clenched my fists under the table. What I expected is for you to take responsibility for your choices. You cheated. You broke our vows. And now you're punishing your son with lies because you can't stand to admit it. His mask slipped. He slammed his hand on the table, voice rising. Daniel, don't you dare put this on me. You think you're perfect. You're pathetic, Claire. And you've turned my own son against me. The entire cafe turned to look. People whispered. And Daniel, red-faced and trembling, stormed out before I could even reply. But the damage was already done. Because the next time Michael went to his father's house, things exploded. When Michael came back, he wouldn't even look at me. He was furious at Daniel. He told me about the screaming match they'd had. About how Daniel had cursed at him when he questioned the story. Michael, he said you ruined his life. That you poisoned me against him. Mom, he even called me ungrateful. I wrapped my arms around him as he shook with anger. My son. My sweet boy. Forced to endure his father's bitterness. That was the moment Michael decided he didn't want to see his dad anymore. But of course, Daniel didn't take that quietly. It started with phone calls. Voicemails filled with venom. Daniel, you're turning him against me, Claire. This is all your fault. His my son too. Then came the messages from his family. His mother, my ex-mother-in-law, screaming that I'd stolen her grandson. His sister sending nasty texts to my parents. And then, the threats. One night, my phone buzzed. A text from his mother. You'll regret this. You don't rip a father from his son without paying for it. My hands shook as I read it. This wasn't just harassment anymore. It was a threat. That's when I realized, this wasn't just about lies anymore. This was about control. And they were willing to cross every line to keep it. The harassment grew bolder. My ex showed up drunk at my house one night, pounding on the door, demanding to see Michael. My boyfriend was there at the time, and when he tried to get Daniel to leave, things turned ugly. Daniel shoved him, shouting obscenities. Michael watched from the stairs, wide-eyed, frozen. That was my breaking point. I picked up the phone and dialed the police. When the officers arrived, Daniel tried to bluster his way out of it. But they weren't buying it. They escorted him off the property, and for the first time in years, I saw fear in his eyes. Fear of consequences. I thought calling the police would be the end of it. But in reality, it was just the beginning of Daniel's downfall. Because once the truth was out, there was no going back. After the night the police escorted Daniel off my property, something shifted in me. For years, I had walked on eggshells. I had tried to be the bigger person, to protect Michael from his father's flaws, to avoid exposing the ugliness of the truth. I thought shielding him would preserve his childhood, his innocence. But all it did was give Daniel the perfect opening to rewrite history. No more. That night, after the squad car pulled away and Michael finally went to bed, I sat at the kitchen table with my boyfriend. My hands shook as I gripped a cup of tea I didn't even drink. I'm done. I'm not protecting him anymore. If Daniel wants to play dirty, then fine. But this time, he's going to choke on his own lies. Because the cruelest revenge isn't plotting in secret, it's simply telling the truth and letting it burn the liar alive. The next morning, I sat Michael down at the table. He was still shaken from the night before, but his eyes were clear. Angry, but clear. Michael. I need to tell you everything. No more half-truths. No more pretending. And so, I laid it all out. I told him about the affair, the messages I had found, the way Daniel twisted reality to cover his guilt. Michael sat there silently, fists clenched, jaw tight. When I finished, he let out a shaky laugh. Michael, so all this time, I've been blaming you for something he did. I defended him. I fought you in my head. And the whole time, he was lying. I reached for his hand. This time, he didn't pull away. Me, none of this is your fault. Don't blame yourself for believing your dad. He's your father. You wanted to trust him. That's normal. Michael, I don't want to see him again. Ever. Those words hit with the weight of finality. And I knew this was Michael's decision, not mine. Daniel had finally burned the bridge himself. Of course, when Daniel realized his son wasn't answering his calls or showing up for visitation, he exploded. Voicemails filled my inbox, each one angrier than the last. Daniel, you're poisoning him against me, Claire. Daniel, you think you've won, but you're just pathetic. Daniel, I'm his father. You can't erase me. But Michael wasn't listening anymore. He blocked his father's number. He ignored the messages. For the first time, he was protecting himself. And here's the irony, Daniel's greatest weapon had always been control. But the moment Michael chose to walk away, that weapon turned to dust in his hands. Of course, Daniel's family wasn't done. His mother called me at all hours, screaming. His sister harassed my parents online, sending vile messages about me being a homewrecker and a liar. But what they didn't know was that I was keeping records of everything. Every voicemail. Every text. Every threat. I had a folder on my laptop and a binder in my closet, filled with printed evidence. Screenshots, transcripts, copies. I logged the dates, the times, even the witnesses when Daniel showed up at my house drunk. Because I knew eventually, this would all come to a head. And when it did, I wasn't going to be empty-handed. The best revenge isn't just emotional. It's strategic. It's preparing so thoroughly that when your enemy finally oversteps, they hand you the knife to cut them down. The harassment didn't stop. One evening, Daniel's sister parked outside my house for an hour, just sitting there, glaring at my windows. Michael noticed. Michael, Mom, are we safe? Me, yes, baby. We're safe. I've got everything documented. If they try anything, they'll regret it. That night, he hugged me tighter than he had in years. And in that moment, I realized my son didn't just see me as his mother anymore. He saw me as his protector. The one person who never lied, even when the truth hurt. Meanwhile, Daniel spiraled. Without Michael, he grew more erratic. His co-workers whispered about his drinking. His social media posts became bitter rants about betrayal and fatherhood. He painted himself as the victim to anyone who would listen. But the truth? He was unraveling. And every time he lashed out, I added another page to my binder. Because the sweetest revenge wasn't destroying him myself. It was watching him destroy himself and simply keeping the receipts. Then came the night he crossed the final line. It was late, past midnight, when the pounding on my door started again. My boyfriend was staying over, and we both froze as the banging grew louder. Daniel, open up, Claire. I know you're in there. Let me see my son. Michael, now 16, came down the stairs in his pajamas, his face pale but determined. Michael, don't open it, Mom. I don't want to see him. Ever. Those words, spoken loud enough for Daniel to hear through the door, made the pounding stop. Then came a roar of rage. Daniel, ungrateful little brat. After everything I've done for you, you'll regret this. That was it. I picked up the phone and dialed the police again. When they arrived, Daniel was staggering, clearly drunk, his rage spilling out in incoherent shouting. The officers didn't hesitate. They put him in cuffs and led him away as he screamed profanities at all of us, even at his own son. Michael stood at the window, watching. His face was unreadable, but I saw the flicker of something in his eyes. Not sadness. Not even anger. Just relief. Because in that moment, Michael realized the truth. Sometimes the parent you lose isn't really a loss at all. It's freedom. The fallout was immediate. Daniel's family tried to spin the story, of course. They claimed I'd called the cops unfairly, that I'd brainwashed Michael. But this time, I had more than words. I had proof. I filed a police report, attaching every voicemail, every threat, every drunken outburst I'd documented. When his family begged me not to press charges, I simply said, "Maybe you should have told him to stop harassing us." And just like that, the harassment stopped. Looking back, I realized that the revenge wasn't flashy. There were no dramatic takedowns, no grand public humiliations. But in many ways, it was more devastating than anything I could have planned. Because Daniel lost the one thing he thought he controlled, his son's love. And he had no one to blame but himself. The liar lost his voice. The manipulator lost his control. And as for me, I finally got my peace. But the real payoff, the part that made it all worth it, was still to come. The night Daniel was hauled away in handcuffs should have been the end of it. But as anyone who has lived through years of manipulation knows, closure doesn't arrive neatly packaged. It arrives in pieces. 4 days afterward, I braced myself. I expected the phone calls, the screaming, the harassment to return. I thought his family would double down on their crusade against me. But instead, silence. Complete silence. At first, I didn't trust it. Silence from Daniel felt like the calm before a storm. I kept my binder of evidence close, my phone charged, and my doors locked. But the storm never came. Because when the truth finally exposes a liar, sometimes it doesn't cause a final explosion, it causes a collapse. And collapse is quieter, but far more permanent. The first ripple of his downfall came from Michael himself. 1 week after the arrest, Michael told me flat out, "Michael, I'm done. I'm not answering his calls. I don't want to see him. I don't want to hear from him again. Ever." He blocked his father's number, deleted him from social media, and even told his grandparents, "Michael, stop calling me about him." He made his choices. I've made mine. They didn't like it, of course. His grandmother cried, his aunt raged. But Michael didn't bend. For the first time, I saw my son drawing his own boundaries, standing tall in his own truth. And here's the kicker, he didn't need me to defend him anymore. He defended himself. And that right there was the sweetest revenge of all, not just that Daniel lost access to his son, but that Michael chose to walk away on his own terms. The second ripple came at Daniel's job. I don't know all the details, I only know what filtered back through whispers. But apparently, his drinking and temper didn't stay confined to our private lives. He lashed out at colleagues, missed deadlines, even got into a shouting match with a supervisor. One of Michael's friends' parents worked in the same company. They pulled me aside one day and said quietly, "Parent, I don't know what's going on with your ex, but he's not doing well. People are noticing." And though I wouldn't say it out loud, inside, a small voice whispered, "Good." Because maybe, just maybe, the consequences he dodged at home had finally caught up to him in the place he thought he was untouchable. But the most devastating ripple wasn't at work. It wasn't with his family. It was in his own reflection. See, Daniel's entire identity had been built around control. Control over his wife. Control over his narrative. Control over his son. And now, he had none. Michael wouldn't return his calls. His family stopped defending him once they realized the police reports and evidence were real. Even his co-workers had started pulling away. And that isolation, it hollowed him out. I didn't need to see him to know. You can hear it in the way someone talks, the desperation in their messages. The man who once screamed at me with such certainty now left pathetic, rambling voicemails, alternating between begging and raging. "Daniel, just let me explain to him. Please. I can fix this. Daniel, this is your fault, Claire. You poisoned him against me. Daniel, I just want my son back." But Michael didn't budge. Because once a child sees the truth of who a parent really is, they can't unsee it. And Daniel's mask had shattered beyond repair. For me, the payoff wasn't about dancing on his misery. It was about the quiet moments. Like walking past Michael's room and hearing him laugh with his friends, carefree again. Like sitting at the dinner table and realizing the tension that had haunted our lives for years was finally gone. Like looking at my son and knowing, really knowing, that he trusted me again. Those were the victories that mattered. But I won't lie. There was a certain satisfaction in knowing Daniel had been exposed for exactly what he was. One night, months later, Michael sat with me on the porch. We were watching the sunset, the air warm, the cicadas buzzing. Michael, you know, Mom, for years I thought you were the bad guy. I thought you broke the family. My chest tightened, but I stayed quiet. Michael, but now? I get it. You were just surviving and protecting me. Tears stung my eyes, but I smiled through them. Me, that's all I ever wanted. To protect you. Michael, you did. Even when I didn't see it. And in that moment, I knew, Daniel could scream, he could lie, he could burn every bridge he touched, but he would never take that truth away from us again. Because sometimes revenge isn't a grand explosion. Sometimes it's the slow, steady reclaiming of peace, while the person who tried to destroy you drowns in their own chaos. By the time Michael turned 17, Daniel was a ghost in our lives. His calls had dwindled to nothing. His family stopped reaching out after realizing they had no leverage. And me. I finally felt free. Free from the paranoia. Free from the lies. Free from the constant battle to protect my son from the truth. All that remained was silence. A silence that, for the first time, didn't feel threatening. It felt like peace. And let me tell you, peace is the sweetest revenge of all. As satisfying as Daniel's downfall was, the real victory wasn't his collapse. It was what came after, for me, for my son, and for the life we rebuilt from the ashes. Looking back now, it feels almost surreal. The marriage that I thought would last forever. The betrayal that tore it apart. The years of silence and half-truths. The storm of lies that nearly stole my son from me. And finally, the quiet collapse of the man who caused it all. If you had told me back then, when I first discovered those texts on Daniel's phone, that one day I'd be sitting here, free of his shadow, I wouldn't have believed you. But that's the thing about time. It doesn't erase wounds, but it does reveal truths. And the biggest truth I learned? Sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't destroying someone, it's refusing to let them destroy you. When I think of Daniel now, I don't feel anger. I don't feel sadness. What I feel is nothing. And honestly, that nothing is liberating. Because indifference is the opposite of the control he once had over me. The real payoff wasn't his arrest. It wasn't the silence that followed. It wasn't even watching his lies collapse under their own weight. The real payoff was peace. Peace for me. Peace for my son. Peace for the life we rebuilt together. Michael grew into a young man who sees the world with clarity. He learned early on that people aren't always who they claim to be, that sometimes love can be twisted, and that trust must be earned, not demanded. But he also learned resilience. He learned that lies can be defeated by truth. That one parent's weakness doesn't erase the strength of the other. That betrayal doesn't have to define you, it can shape you into someone wiser, stronger. And me. I learned that protecting your child doesn't always mean shielding them from pain. Sometimes it means telling them the hard truths, even when it hurts. Because truth may sting, but lies scar. If I could go back, I wouldn't tell Michael adults just grow apart. I'd tell him the truth, in a way he could understand. Because lies, even protective ones, become the cracks manipulators slip through. But I don't beat myself up anymore. I did what I thought was best at the time. And the beauty of life is that we can learn, adapt, and do better moving forward. I'm proud of the mother I became. I'm proud of the son I raised. And I'm even proud of the scars, because they remind me that I survived. Let me leave you with this. Betrayal hurts. Lies hurt. Losing the life you thought you had, it hurts. But none of that pain defines you. What defines you is what you do after. Do you let the liar control your narrative? Or do you take it back? Do you let the betrayal consume you? Or do you build something stronger from it? Do you fight fire with fire? Or do you fight lies with truth, until the liar drowns in their own smoke? For me, revenge wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't about humiliating him in front of the world. It was about patience. About documentation. About letting the truth stand unshakable, while his lies collapsed like a house of cards. And in the end, he lost everything he thought he controlled. His son. His reputation. His power. All while I gained the one thing he could never take from me again: peace. So if you're watching this and you've ever been betrayed by a partner, a friend, even a family member, remember this: you don't have to match their cruelty to win. Sometimes the sweetest revenge is simply surviving better than they ever thought you could. Today, Michael is thriving. He's planning for college, building his own future. We talk openly now, no secrets, no lies. He knows the full story, and he knows that his mother stood by him through every storm. And me. I'm not bitter. I'm not broken. I'm free. Daniel may still be out there somewhere, stumbling through the wreckage of his choices. But that's not my story anymore. My story is one of survival, truth, and finally, peace. And if you stayed with me through this story, thank you. Stories like mine aren't just about revenge, they're about resilience. About finding strength when you feel weakest, and about proving that liars and manipulators can never win in the long run. If you want to hear more stories like this of betrayal, revenge, and justice, make sure to hit that subscribe button, tap the bell so you don't miss the next one, and drop a comment below. Have you ever been in a situation where the truth became your revenge? Because sometimes, the most powerful stories are the ones we share.